The restaurant was one of those places where everything looked perfect, almost unreal. Soft golden lights hung from the ceiling, glowing gently, like they were afraid to shine too brightly. The floor was polished so well that it reflected the lights above, making the room feel larger and calmer. Glasses clinked softly as people lifted them with care. Quiet music played in the background, slow and smooth, like it was meant to relax everyone who stepped inside. People spoke in low voices. No one laughed too loudly. No one moved too fast. It was a place where people wanted to look important, sound important, and feel important, if only for one evening. This was not a place for noise or mistakes. At the far side of the room stood a large piano. It was black, smooth, and shining under the soft lights. It looked elegant, almost proud. It felt like it held many stories inside it, stories no one had listened to in a long time. Most nights, no one touched it. It was there more as a symbol of class than a source of music. People walked past it without a second glance. That evening, the waitress moved quietly between tables. She carried plates carefully, her steps light and practiced. Her smile was polite but tired. She had worked at this restaurant for almost a year, long enough to know the routine, long enough to know which customers were kind and which ones were not. Her uniform was clean and neatly pressed, but it was old. The fabric had softened with time. Her shoes were worn at the edges, showing signs of many long shifts and longer days. Her hair was tied back simply. No jewelry, no effort to stand out. She did her job without complaint, even when her feet hurt and her back ached. Most customers barely noticed her. To them, she was just another waitress, someone who brought food and cleared plates, someone whose name they never asked for and would never remember. But inside her, there was a tired heart. She had learned early in life how to stay quiet, how to listen instead of speak, how to smile even when words hurt. Life had not been kind to her, not in obvious ways, but in small, steady ones. Dreams had come and gone. Responsibilities had slowly taken their place. Family needs, bills. Survival. She still showed up every day, because life did not pause for dreams, and dreams did not pay rent. That night, the door of the restaurant opened with confidence. A man walked in, laughing loudly, his voice cutting through the soft music like it owned the room. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Some people recognized him right away. Others only noticed his expensive suit, his shiny watch, and the way he walked like the ground belonged to him. He was a millionaire, everyone could tell. He did not hurry to his table. He enjoyed being seen. He greeted a few people, shook hands, and smiled in a way that said he expected respect. When he finally sat down at a table near the center of the room, the atmosphere changed. His presence felt heavy, like the room had to adjust around him. The waitress was assigned to his table. She took a breath and walked over, holding a menu. Her face showed the same polite smile she gave everyone. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. He looked at her slowly, from her face down to her shoes, then back up again. His eyes lingered just long enough to feel uncomfortable. A small smirk appeared on his face. "Good evening," he repeated with a laugh. "This place hires anyone now, I see." Her body froze for a brief moment, just half a second. Then she nodded gently, like she hadn't heard anything wrong. "What would you like to order, sir?" she asked. He leaned back in his chair, resting one arm across the table. "Tell me," he said loudly, "is this your dream job?" A few people at nearby tables glanced over. Some smiled awkwardly. Others pretended not to hear. The waitress felt her chest tighten. Her heart beat a little faster. But her face stayed calm. "I'm here to serve," she replied quietly. He laughed again, louder this time. "Serve, right?" he said. "Some people are born to serve, I guess." The words hit harder than she expected. Still, she said nothing. She wrote down his order carefully, making sure her hands did not shake. then turned and walked away. At the counter, she paused. She took a slow, deep breath. She had heard words like that before, from customers, from strangers, sometimes even from people she trusted. They always hurt, even when she told herself not to care. When she returned with his drink, he was still in the mood to speak. "You know," he said, lifting the glass and looking at it, "I started with nothing, absolutely nothing. But I worked hard. That's how you escape places like this." She placed the glass on the table gently. "Yes, sir," she said. "Hard work," he continued, "not standing around all day carrying plates." Some people laughed softly. Others shifted in their chairs, uncomfortable but silent. Her face felt warm. Her throat felt tight. The words pressed against her chest, but she swallowed them down. She turned and walked away again. The manager noticed the tension and came closer. He whispered an apology to her, his voice low. She shook her head. "It's okay," she said. But it was not okay. As the night continued, the millionaire's voice grew louder. He talked about his success, his money, his power. He spoke like the world owed him something, like people below him should listen and learn. When the waitress came back to clear plates, he looked at her again. "Tell me something," he said. "What do you plan to do with your life? Or is this it?" The question cut deep. Her eyes lowered. Memories rushed into her mind. Late nights, practicing alone, cheap keyboards, old lessons, a dream she once held close but had learned to hide. She swallowed. "This is what I do right now," she said. "Exactly," he replied with a smile. "Right now, and probably forever." The table laughed again. She stood still for a moment longer than usual. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the plates. Then she turned and walked away without saying another word. This time, no one watched her leave. Near the back of the restaurant, she stopped. She looked at her reflection in a dark window. She looked tired, older than she felt inside. But behind the tired eyes, there was something else. Something quiet. Something unbroken. Her shift was almost over. As she wiped down a nearby table, her eyes drifted toward the piano. It stood there, silent and patient, just like it always had. For a moment, the sounds of the restaurant faded away. She remembered small rooms filled with music, long hours of practice, fingers sore but heart alive. She remembered believing she could be more than what the world decided for her. She shook her head gently. That life felt far away now. "Hey," the millionaire called. "You missed a spot." She walked back and cleaned the table again. When the bill came, he looked at it slowly. "This is expensive," he said. "I hope you get a good tip. You'll need it." He left some money on the table and stood up. "Remember," he added, "dreams don't pay bills." Then he walked away, laughing. The restaurant slowly returned to normal. People began talking again. The music felt louder now. The air felt heavier. The waitress stood still. Then she took a breath and walked to the manager. "My shift is over," she said softly. "May I ask something?" The manager looked at her. "What is it?" She looked toward the piano. "May I play?" "Just once." He hesitated. "You play?" "Yes," she said. After a pause, he nodded. "One piece." She smiled. She walked toward the piano. People noticed. She sat down. Her fingers hovered above the keys. She closed her eyes, and just before the first note, everything stopped. For a moment, nothing moved. The restaurant felt frozen, like the air itself was holding its breath. Plates stopped clinking. Voices faded into silence. Even the soft background music was gone. All eyes slowly turned toward the piano. The waitress sat still, her hands resting lightly above the keys. Her shoulders were tense, but her breathing was calm. She had played many times before, but never like this. Never with so many eyes watching. Never with so much weight on her heart. She opened her eyes. Then she played the first note. It was soft, gentle, almost unsure, but it carried something deep inside it. The sound moved across the room like a quiet whisper, reaching people before they realized they were listening. She played another note, then another. Slowly, a melody formed. It was not loud. It was not fast, but it was full of feeling. Each note felt honest, like it came straight from her chest. The piano no longer looked like decoration. It looked alive. People leaned forward in their seats. Someone near the window stopped chewing. A couple holding hands squeezed a little tighter without knowing why. The room had changed, but no one spoke. The waitress played on. Her fingers moved smoothly now, no longer shaking. The music grew stronger, richer. It carried sadness, hope, pain, and warmth all at once. It sounded like long nights alone, like dreams delayed but not forgotten, like someone who had been quiet for too long, finally finding a voice. The manager stood still near the counter. His eyes widened slightly. He had not expected this. No one had. Near the door, the millionaire stopped walking. He had been halfway out when the first notes reached him. At first, he did not turn around. He told himself it was just background noise, just a waitress trying to show off. But his feet did not move. He turned slowly. The sound pulled him back, step by step, until he was standing where he could see her clearly. His confident smile was gone. His face was serious now, focused. The music changed. It became deeper, stronger, more emotional. It filled the room in a way words never could. It told a story without speaking. A story of struggle, of being seen as small, of holding on to something beautiful when life kept taking things away. Somewhere in the room, someone wiped their eyes. The millionaire felt something shift inside him. He did not understand it at first. He only knew that his chest felt heavy, uncomfortable, like the music was asking him questions he did not want to answer. He remembered his own past, not the success, not the money, but the early days, the fear, the doubt, the moments when someone had laughed at him too. The waitress's fingers moved faster now. The melody rose and fell like waves. It felt powerful, honest, brave. This was not a hobby. This was not luck. This was talent, pure and undeniable. The room was completely silent, except for the piano. Even the waitstaff had stopped working. Everyone was watching her now, not as a waitress, not as someone small, but as someone important, as someone who mattered. The final note slowed, softer again, gentler, like a goodbye. Her fingers pressed the last key. Then she lifted her hands. Silence followed. 1 second passed, then another, and then dash applause. It started slowly. One person, then two, then the entire room. People stood up. Hands clapped loudly. Some smiled. Some cried. Some looked at each other in disbelief. The sound filled the restaurant. The waitress sat still for a moment, unsure what to do. Her eyes were wide. Her heart raced. She had not played for applause. She had played because she needed to. She stood up slowly and bowed her head slightly. The applause grew louder. The manager stepped forward, his face full of shock and pride. "That was incredible," he said softly. She nodded, unable to speak. Then she noticed the millionaire walking toward her. The room grew quiet. Again, he stopped a few steps away. For the first time that night, he did not look tall or powerful. He looked human. "I owe you an apology," he said. Everyone listened. "I spoke without knowing who you were," he continued. "I judged you by your job, not your ability. That was wrong." She looked at him calmly. She did not smile. She did not frown. "I didn't play to prove anything," she said quietly. "I played because it's who I am." He nodded slowly. "I see that now," he replied. He took a breath. "I spent years believing money meant success," he said. Tonight reminded me that talent, kindness, and strength matter more. The room stayed silent. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. He held it out to her. "If you ever want help returning to music," he said, "I would like to support that. No pressure, no conditions." She looked at the card but did not take it right away. "Thank you," she said, "but understand something first." He waited. "Respect should not come after applause," she said. "It should come before." Her words landed softly but firmly. He nodded again, humbled. "You're right," he said. She took the card, not as a reward, but as a choice. The millionaire stepped back. The crowd slowly relaxed. Conversations began again, but they sounded different now. Quieter, more thoughtful. The waitress walked away from the piano. People looked at her differently as she passed. Some smiled, some nodded, some whispered words of praise. She accepted none of it loudly. She only smiled gently. In the staff room, she sat down and let out a long breath. Her hands trembled again, but this time from relief. She had spoken without speaking. She had been heard. Later that night, she walked home under the quiet sky. The streets were calm. The city lights reflected softly on the pavement. She held the card in her pocket, but her thoughts were elsewhere. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine. Again, not fame, not wealth, but purpose. The next weeks passed slowly. She still worked at the restaurant, still wore the same uniform, still served tables. But something had changed. The manager asked her to play the piano once a week. Guests came early to listen. Some stayed longer. The piano was no longer silent, and neither was she. The millionaire returned one evening. This time, he spoke kindly. This time, he listened more than he talked. She eventually accepted his help. Not as charity. As support, she enrolled in music classes again. Small steps. Slow progress. But steady. There were days when she felt tired. Days when doubt returned. But she remembered that night. The silence. The sound. The way the room had listened. Months later, she played on a larger stage. Not a grand one, but one that mattered. The millionaire sat in the audience, quiet and respectful. When the music ended, he clapped like everyone else. Not louder, not softer, just grateful. And the waitress no longer just a waitress smiled, because sometimes one moment is enough to change everything.